Green's case has been a subject of debate for years. His trial attorneys argued that his mental illness was the reason behind the crimes, but their argument was unsuccessful. However, Green's attorney is seeking to halt the execution, citing his intellectual disability and history of mental illness. Let's take a closer look at the case of Green, and how it highlights the debate over mental illness and the death penalty. The argument of Green's trial attorneys. Green's trial attorneys argued that his mental illness had led him to commit the crimes. He told police that he believed Armstead and her children were conspiring against him and that he heard voices. These statements were made to support his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the court found him guilty and sentenced him to death. The intellectual disability of Green. Green's IQ qualifies him as borderline intellectual functioning, according to his attorney, Michael Mola. This means that he has an IQ of between 70 and 75. However, this is not the only factor that has led to the debate over his execution. Green also has a history of mental illness. The history of Green's mental illness. Green was prescribed medication for schizophrenia and depression after a 4-day stay at a psychiatric hospital just a month before the murders. However, he could not afford to continue taking it. This history of mental illness has led his attorney to argue that he should not be executed. The debate over mental illness and the death penalty. The case of Green highlights the ongoing debate over mental illness and the death penalty. Some argue that individuals with mental illness should not be executed because they cannot fully understand the consequences of their actions. Others argue that the death penalty should be applied equally to all, regardless of mental illness. Conclusion. The case of Green raises important questions about the intersection of mental illness and the death penalty. While his trial attorneys argued that his mental illness had led him to commit the crimes, the court found him guilty and sentenced him to death. However, his attorney is seeking to halt the execution, citing his intellectual disability and history of mental illness. As the debate over mental illness and the death penalty continues, the case of Green remains an important example of this complex issue.